Now let us see how to define a 2D source. Now let us see how to define a 2D source, that is a boundary source. We follow the same sort of strategy that is for a 3D source. The only difference here is, instead of going into flow analysis, we go to each boundary and then right click, which gives us option of edit. So once we click on edit on any of the boundary, the third tab is the source tab. First is the basic setting, next is the boundary inputs or boundary details, next is source. So if we want to insert any boundary source, we activate here or tick here as boundary source and sources, and whichever source type we have to specify, we click on that. For example, in this particular slide, it is shown that we have activated the energy source. So when we click on this energy source, we will be asked to give flux. Now note that the difference here is watt per meter square, not watt per meter cube. Since it is a 2D boundary source, it is per unit area, not per unit volume. So that is the only difference from boundary source to volume source. Now there are some rules for boundary source also. Boundary source terms are available on walls, inlets, outlets and openings. That is, they are available only on these 4 boundary conditions. And the total source are also available on boundaries for which the solver assumes a uniform source density in order to obtain the flux based quantity. So this is the second rule. Also, boundary source option is in fluid domain is basically you can specify energy source, continuity or mass source, radiation source, turbulence and fluid components, whereas boundary source in solid will have energy and radiation. So this is similar to the volumetric source. An example shown here for boundary source is an outlet. These windows are there and the roof is there, and we have a radiation source on the boundaries. So this is extremely useful when modeling room flow, and the effect of radiation, solar radiation on the boundaries can be incorporated by giving radiation source. So the summary of this particular session on source is we can provide subdomains in order to specify a volumetric source, which allow us to specify volumetric source for the governing equations. For boundary source, we specify boundary source on the surface or boundaries, which are incorporated then in the governing equation. Also, point source allow us to supply a point source for the governing equations, which we do by creating or inserting points. So this is the summary for the source, and we will now move ahead to discuss the next topic.